rise and join the committee for the salute to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So please note that this meeting is being electronically recorded. We have a full agenda tonight, but one in which I think the committee will enjoy hearing from many of our guests. We have some important decisions to make tonight, and they're reflective of some great contributions that have been made to the Attleboro schools. Our first presentation, I'd ask our Title I coordinator, Sue Levine, to join us. And I believe Mr. Sheehan is going to introduce Ms. Levine and what she is here to be honored for.
On behalf of the Attleboro Public Schools, I'd like to present this certificate of recognition to Susan Levine. Susan has been recognized by the National Association of Federal Education Program Administrators for outstanding leadership and strong degree of caring for the children of Attleboro, and works tirelessly to promote activities that benefit the children and families of Attleboro, as well as throughout the state of Massachusetts. I, for one, can say that the students certainly do benefit, but also her colleagues and the administration in the Attleboro Public Schools truly benefit from her dedication to all of us, and makes it a better place for kids to come and learn and for teachers to teach. So this is very well deserved, Susan. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Levine, Mr. Sheehan may have just asked you, but did you want to sit and join us for
I
a
don't
moment?
think so.
Okay. Well, I think we just would want to say that the committee appreciates all the hard work that you and your colleagues do throughout the district. I know that you're one member of a team of coordinators who do a tremendous amount of work that the district would not be able to move forward without all the contributions. So particularly, I know with the work that you do with regard to some of the early childhood services and early education, the district is moving in the direction it is because of your contributions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I know you don't need an award or my comments to know that, but we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Nobody disagrees? Good. All right. Nobody would, obviously. Our next item on our agenda under new business, and it's our first item tonight, is the consideration of the naming of the track facility at Tozer Cassidy Field at Attleboro High School. The administration has brought forth a recommendation to name that facility, which, as everyone knows, reopened this past fall with quite a bit of fanfare. It is about to, in some ways, reopen again as we prepare to host the first spring track meet at Attleboro High School in several years. And the individual whose name the administration has brought forth to the committee is Stephen Newman, former teacher at Attleboro High School, a former dean of students. He's a lifelong educator, and he's someone who has made quite an impact on the Attleboro schools community. So joining us first are to testify in defense of this recommendation are three representatives of the Attleboro High School alumni, and I'd ask those individuals to come forward and join the committee now. And we can see if you can talk the committee into this decision. So joining us from the class of 1975, Steve Semple and David Bork, and joining us from the class of 1992, Darby Sawyer. So, Mr. Bork, perhaps we could start with you, and you could talk a little bit about the impact that Steve Newman had on you, your peers, and on the Attleboro High School during your time here.
Sure. I'm a lifelong resident of the Attleboro area. Graduated in 1975, and I can say that over the years I've looked back fondly on a lot of the lessons learned being on the track team with Steve Newman and being around him. I'm honored to be here and being asked to speak on behalf of Steve Newman, but I can tell you that anybody that knew him as either a teacher, a coach, a fellow coach could speak easily just as well on a recommendation to name the field after Steve. Steve's record speaks for itself. The winning is published everywhere. But it goes much more beyond that. Steve, Coach Newman, taught kids how to believe in themselves. He taught them how to deal with personal challenges, how to challenge themselves, how to deal with adversity. And all of those things over time are things that come back again in life. And over time, you think back on those lessons and think about things like, I can remember, having a workout that seemed like it was an impossible task, and him saying, break it down into pieces, and after a while, you don't even realize how many miles you ran or how much effort you put into it. But what he did was he, over time, developed a culture of commitment and respect for the school, for your teammates, for even the people you ran against. And I think that culture just grew and grew, and you talk to people that went through those programs, and every one of them speaks fondly about it. And it's also interesting when you run into athletes that played other sports, and they talk about it. Everyone knew and had respect for Steve Newman and for the success of the teams and the work ethics. Later on, after I was out of school, Steve approached me and had this idea to start a teen center in Attleboro at the old Armory. Felt there was a need there. There were a lot of kids that he ran into in school that were having difficulty and challenges, and he decided if he could start a program over there, that he would get the families and the kids more engaged, and he just needed some seed money, so that was easy. We got a bunch of people that were on the track team and had a fundraiser, but he took that and ran with it and got seed money, got matching funds, and today that legacy continues with the, it's now under the control of the recreation department, but he was the one that had that idea and came up with it. And it's things like that I think go far beyond the success of in the record of the track teams during his era. It's about much broader than that, and the commitment that he did for the community and the success that he had and those people that he interacted with did. And I think it would be a great honor to him and to the success and to those who were around him. And it would also serve as a reminder for those in the future about how to be, successful and to work with those type of morals and values.
Thank you, Mr. Bork.
Thank you.
Mr. Semple.
It's a great honor to be here tonight speaking about Steve Newman. He's certainly best known as a track coach. I'm not going to speak about track tonight because in the time that I've known Steve Newman, and it's decades at this point, he's really been most effective in influencing young adults to learn life skills and make good decisions. And he spent a lot of time working with at-risk students. And I know that for a lot of those people, he was the only one who was giving them the guidance that they needed to make good decisions and get through school and get into a productive life. As a teacher and as a coach and as an administrator, he taught thousands of kids over the years to set goals for themselves, to persevere, to overcome hardship, and to make something of themselves. I was one of those students back in the 70s, and I would not be where I am today without the influence of Coach Newman and his interest in me as an individual. I still use the lessons that he taught me every single day in my personal life and in my career, and I know that many others had the same kind of experience, many of whom were heading down a bad path until Coach Newman got a hold of them and showed them a better way. His influence extended far beyond the classroom, the gymnasium, or the track. So I urge you to pass this measure before you tonight as a way to acknowledge and commemorate the dedication and devotion that Steve Newman demonstrated and continues to demonstrate to the youth of this community. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Semple. Ms. Sawyer?
I graduated in '92, but I only had the pleasure of having Coach Newman for my freshman year in track and for winter track, and of course we saw him out on the spring track. He, like everyone was saying here, he would have you go and set out goals. No one had a place on the team. You had to earn it, and he would always make you try your hardest, try out different events, and never made you stick to one particular thing. I did have Mr. Newman as a teacher my senior year, and I did learn a lot of life lessons, and I believe it was called life skills at that point. But you know, he always wanted you to be able to go out and achieve your goals, and he would always help you and find a way to get you to achieve that. So he really was a big influence here at Attleboro High School.
Which you now are a member
I
of
am
the
now a
faculty.
teacher
So-
at Attleboro High School.
I
yes.
would imagine that educators would say there are a few things that students could do that could mean more to them than following in their footsteps and joining that profession. So we're going to, when the committee announced that we would be considering this measure, we received some written testimonials from former colleagues of Mr. Newman. To begin the reading into the record of those testimonials, I've asked our superintendent of schools, Mr. Sheehan.
It's my pleasure to be able to read an account that Ed Stanton, who was an Attleboro High School graduate. Ed's a Attleboro resident. He also was a teacher and administrator for 39 years in the Attleboro Public Schools. And he writes, Steve Newman was a colleague for several years. He was admired and respected by the entire school community. I recall my students many times recounting what Mr. Newman thought about a particular topic of the day. The success of his program speaks volumes as his skill as a coach. Coach Tozier and Coach Cassidy are legendary Attleboro coaches and were among my favorite high school teachers. Jim was later a colleague. I can think of no one more worthy than Steve Newman to stand with these icons of Attleboro High School sports. And Steve Newman's track at Tozier Cassidy Field has authentic resonance in which we will all take pride. Ed Stanton, class of '55.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Our next testimonial will be read by our Vice Chair, Mrs. Scales.
Mine is from Ron Straminsky, who was an Attleboro resident, former housemaster, and assistant principal at Attleboro High School. I have known Steve Newman for over 40 years as a teaching colleague at Attleboro High School, an outstanding coach both on and off the track, and as a good friend. He has touched the lives of scores of young people who, under his mentorship, became better individuals because of his influence and guidance. He always gave of his time unselfishly and understood and supported those who needed a kind word when under great duress. Attleboro Blue Pride will be enhanced for all of us by the school committee's support of this action.
Thank you, Mrs. Scales. Our next testimony will be read by Mr. Withers.
I have a
Excerpts from our next testimonial will be read by Mr. Withers.
I have a letter from Coach Kevin DeShane's current culinary arts instructor, Attleboro High class of '78, and former winter and spring track coach, and of course our former head football coach. He writes a very lengthy and passionate letter asking us to support this measure, and I'll read some highlights that I think really get to the heart of the matter. Mr. DeShane says that Coach Newman was not only a respected head cross-country winter and spring track coach, but also a man who always put the welfare of the students first. He always put an effort in trying to make all his athletes rise to their potential. Whether it was through his tutelage or consistent reinforcement of building an athlete's self-esteem, they more times than not attained their goals. Coach Newman's teams always conducted themselves in the same manner as he conducted himself. He was a man of integrity with a fierce competitive demeanor that showed in all of us that he competed for AHS under his guidance. His teams are always the ones that other schools tried to emulate because of the Attleboro High School track program's successful record. Stephen Newman was not just a track coach, but a man who worked extremely hard to help the youth in the city of Attleboro. He was the driving force in establishing the Attleboro Teen Center at the Recreation Center on Pine Street, now known as the Attleboro Youth Center. He worked with troubled teens and brought the best out of them. He made them believe that they could make a difference in their lives and contribute to our community. Coach Stephen Newman is a man who is very deserving of having the track and field facility here at Tozier Cassidy Field named in his honor. This would be a fine tribute for his contributions on and off the track here at Attleboro High School.
Thank you, Mr. Withers. And for our final written testimonial from a former colleague of Mr. Newman, our student representative, Mr. Lancaster.
I'll be reading the account of Dr. Kathy Vespia. She writes, to the members of the Attleboro Committee, I had the privilege of working for Attleboro Public Schools for over 30 years. During those years, as school psychologist and director of the Network program, I had the opportunity to hear from countless students whose lives were turned around by Steve Newman. In all of his roles, teacher, dean, teen center director, coach, he treated his students with respect, set high expectations, and helped each to set meaningful goals. He believed in all of his students at times when they struggled to believe in themselves. In my role now preparing aspiring teachers for rewarding careers, I share with them the many ways that educators such as Steve Newman have a lasting impact on the lives of students inside and outside of the classroom. It is my sincere hope that you would name the new track in his honor. New teachers to Attleboro High School might someday ask, who is Steve Newman? They will learn that he is an exceptional educator that meaningfully touched the lives of all of his students. May they be inspired by the stories they hear. Sincerely, Dr. Kathy Vespia.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. At this time, I'd ask our members of our high school administration, our principal, Mr. Rooney, and our athletic director, Mr. Houle, to join the committee. If there's room, you can stay. I don't know how many chairs we got. Mr. Rooney and Mr. Houle first brought this recommendation to the committee's attention, along with our city's recreation director, Mr. Walsh. And so, Mr. Rooney, I just turn it over to you to perhaps make some closing points prior to the committee's vote.
Well, I'm overwhelmed by the support for this initiative. As you mentioned, Dennis Walsh also joined us in terms of putting this initiative forward. Dennis is out of town right now, but he's definitely with us in spirit. I think one of the things, I've known Steve Newman since I moved here back in 2006. He and I worked together at Bishop Feehan for 6 years, and you would never know all that he had accomplished at Attleboro High School because of his humility. And I think one of the things that is always important to me, anytime I communicate with our parents at the high school or anytime I communicate with our students, I always address the letter as Dear AHS Community. I do believe that we are a community, and I think our community ranges from graduates from the class of 55 to the class of 2014, the parents that support us, the teachers who give their life's blood for this building every single day. And it's important that our young people who are here today, the young people who are in our elementary and middle schools who will follow, need to understand the historical perspective and the tremendous service that people like Steve Newman have given to our school. And so that's why it was important for me to join Mark and to join Dennis to bring this forward. And I think one of the things that that Mr. Bork and Ms. Sawyer and Mr. Semple mentioned is that Steve is a teacher first. And I think that his legacy will not only be, if this is put forward, his legacy will not only be the track records, the founding of the cross-country team, the founding of the winter track team, but also the number of lives that he touched in the classroom. And it is my hope in to work with Steve moving forward to be able to find some ways that maybe we can benefit the students of Attleboro High School, not only the current students, but also students moving forward.
I would like to say Steve Newman was also my coach, my track coach, my sophomore year, and I had him as a teacher as well. And I like to think that he instilled a lot in me as well, growing up and really wanting to get an education and giving back to the community. But he's not done. He's in the Athletic Hall of Fame, but he's also on the Athletic Hall of Fame committee. So the last 2 years, he's been a big part of us moving forward with the Athletic Hall of Fame, and we just had our induction this past October. And we got him signed on for another couple of years, I believe. So he's someone who continues to give back to the community. So I think this is certainly a great opportunity to recognize him, for the track at Attleboro High School.
Thank you, Mr. Hool, and thank you, Mr. Rooney. And a very important point by Mr. Hool that Mr. Newman's contributions are ongoing. His contributions to education have gone on in the 14 years since he retired from the Attleboro schools, and should, although the committee does not do quid pro quo actions in this room, if Mr. Newman were to find himself with some time, we have plenty of volunteer opportunities, and we would be more than happy to welcome him back in the fold. So, because of the tireless efforts and invaluable contributions to the children and young adults by Steve Newman, I make a motion to name the track at Tozer Cassidy Field at Attleboro High School in honor of Stephen F. Newman, effective May 2nd, 2014.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Larson.
I had the pleasure of being at AHS when Mr. Newman was a teacher. He was highly respected by everybody in the building. You could tell he's one of those special teachers because there were always kids around him all day long. And they loved being around him, and he loved being around them. And I can't imagine naming the track after anybody else with his legacy. So this would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Mr. Storrs.
I think it's very important to say that this is not something that this committee does lightly. We have a policy that talks about naming of areas in the school district, and since I've been involved, I think I've only seen one other area. That's how I believe important this is. But from the testimonials, it's very obvious that he's very deserving.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I'll just add a quick comment myself that I graduated from Attleboro High School the year that Mr. Newman retired the first time, and as you can come back, and I think Mr. Larson commented about to see students constantly around him and the impact that he would have on them, and the only thing I would add to that is that there were all different types of students that were around Mr. Newman at all times. It wasn't just students who were involved in the athletic program or who were involved in one demographic or another. One of the challenges that the high school administration and our educators know better than us, that one of the perpetual challenges of a high school, the size of Attleboro High School, is fighting against students feeling invisible. And to Mr. Newman, there was no such thing as an invisible student. And his impact is certainly more significant than just having a track named after him, but I think at a minimum we should definitely have the track named after him. So with that, I'll call for a roll call vote. Ms. Singer?
Yes.
Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, yes. Mrs. Scales?
Yes.
Mr. Tyler?
Yes.
Mrs. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Withers?
Yes.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan, please direct the administration to name the track after Stephen Newman, effective May 2nd, 2014.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks to all of our guests, our representatives from the Attleboro High School alumni, and we look forward to seeing you at the dedication on May 2nd. Our next item is our inaugural visit by the leader of our municipal council, Mr. Cook, who, when he's done shaking hands, again, he is from the city council. Mr. Cook, thank you very much for joining us tonight for the first in a series of briefings that you and I will be offering the respective bodies that we have the honor to lead. Mr. Cook and I are playing what Mr. Lancaster and his teammates would call home and home tonight, as I will be joining the municipal council tomorrow night. I certainly look forward to that. And so, Mr. Cook, the floor is yours, and again, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I first wanted to recognize Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Sheehan, and the chairman of the school committee, Mr. Murphy, as well as the members of the administration and the members of the school committee who are here tonight. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I also want to thank Chairman Murphy for accepting the invitation to establish these quarterly presentations, these reciprocal briefings. Shortly as we took office, we had met to discuss such a possibility, and I appreciate his willingness to go along with this idea of us having reciprocal briefings on a quarterly basis. Just to give you a little bit of background about this, late last spring, it was interesting. Then City Councilor Jay DeLisio and myself had actually independently came up with this idea, and then in the fall, I then approached the then chairman Michael Tyler and told him about it, and he agreed with the idea. But rather than implement it at that time, we decided that we would wait until after the election because he wanted to avoid any appearance of any sort of political grandstanding or anything along that of that type. So I want to publicly thank Michael Tyler for his acceptance of this idea and his willingness to support it. And again, although we delayed implementation of it, Mr. Tyler was an integral part in encouraging this process to go forward. The actual intent, as I see it, of these reciprocal briefings is, I believe that with the challenges that our city faces, that it is critical for our two boards to better understand each other. We each have our own rules, regulations. There are certain restraints that are placed upon us, and at times I think this can lead to misunderstandings between the two boards. I think historically that has happened sometimes in the past. Now this idea of reciprocal briefings does not mean certainly that from this point forward we're going to agree on everything, and that there won't be any problems. However, I think collectively we need to make a concerted effort to better understand each other and how our boards operate. What are the issues that we face independently, as I mentioned? What are the constraints that are imposed upon us? Again, never forgetting that we are independently elected legislative bodies, and that we each have our own primary responsibilities that have been placed upon us. As elected officials, we are in the same situation. We all face same demands, regulations, mandates, as well as constituents who expect us to represent them in a very positive way. You know, a month from tomorrow will be May 1st, and on that day, probably just got this last week in the mail, our next, as citizens, our next quarterly real estate tax bill is due. And it's interesting that when you stop to think about it, that on that day, this happened a couple months ago, thousands of our citizens will pull out their checkbook and they'll write a check and they'll mail it off, and they'll write that check to the order of the city of Attleboro. And I've often thought that it's interesting that they don't make that check out to the city of Attleboro Fire Department, or the city of Attleboro Police Department, or the city of Attleboro School Department, or the city of Attleboro Municipal Council. They'd write that out to the city of Attleboro. And to me, this quite simply is an act of faith on their part. An act of faith that they believe that their hard-earned money is going to be invested wisely to make this city, their lives, and the lives of their children much better. And if no other reason than that, you know, we need to make sure that we keep the communication lines open between us, and that as issues arise, that we meet. As I often say to my colleagues on the council, meet is such, we can agree without becoming, we can disagree without becoming disagreeable. And we can focus on the problem and work the problem, that'll make this city much better. I would, on behalf of the council, cordially invite you collectively or as individuals to come to our meetings at any time that you want. We're there every Tuesday night. The first and the third are the regular meetings, where we have the public hearings, and it's a much more, I would say, formal process. But on the second and fourth, on Tuesdays of the month, when we have our committee meetings, and they're a little bit less formal. I'm usually sitting off to the side in the various chairs, take turns sitting in my chair in the center and running the particular committee. We have 10 standing committees, and all of our councilors chair one committee. They serve as vice chair of a second, and they are the third member of a committee. And in addition, we periodically have special committees that deal with special problems that arise or special issues that come up. At the moment, we have 3 such committees, and I anticipate in the next couple of months that probably 2 of them will wrap up their work, and then they'll mainly just be focusing on their own. The special committees, when those are developed, as presiding officer, I appoint the members of that committee. And I have to identify why these members are being chosen to be put on that committee, as well as what the mission of that particular committee is. These next 3 months, April, May, and June, as those of you who are new will soon find out, are among the busiest in the city. Those of you who are returning know exactly what I'm talking about. On the council side, Right now, we are dealing with the Community Development Block Grant Program. We're in the midst of public hearing, which has been continued. These are funds that we get from the federal government that are used to help us develop business or help businesses that are starting up, as well as other related matters. And that's being headed up actually by Gary Arazian and his office there in City Hall. Shortly thereafter, we will be beginning our capital improvements process. And that's something where we do have some interaction with this board and with the administration as we start to look at some of the long-range needs of the city and trying to plan for the next 5 years. Personally, that's one of my favorite times of the year because we get to sit there and really think about what we want the city to look like. What are the needs that we're facing? How can we best solve these? How can we allocate resources wisely in a way, to keep all the services going and make sure that none fall behind? And then, of course, something else we'll all be heavily involved in, of course, is the budget. That'll start for us sometime in late May, and we'll go right up till the very end of June. And again, that's something that we'll be working on together at some points, both independently as our own boards, and then and also somewhat collectively. As far as these briefings are concerned, it's interesting that although the weather doesn't show it, we're now into spring. I mean, today at least was the start of the baseball season, and to me, this is always the beginning of a time of renewal, of hope, a lot of optimism. So I think it's rather fitting that we're starting this process, Chairman Murphy, during the springtime. I'm hoping that on these quarterly sessions, we'll be able to share with each other information about some of the challenges that we're facing, some of the projects we're involved in. One promise that I will make to you, Mr. Chairman, is that if there are questions that come up, it is on my intent to put you on the spot at all, and I will carry that message on to my colleagues, but with the idea
This
being
is being
that...
recorded.
I know that. And I hope some of them are watching.
Good.
But the idea being that if there are questions, and I expect that there will be, I'm not expecting you to become the mouthpiece and try to come in, filled with facts and figures. There may be some that you may be able to answer off the top of your head, but I'd rather see that perhaps these be recorded.
Sure.
You bat them around with your colleagues, and then you come back. Because I know, speaking for my board and also for your board, I know you have a very full agenda every night. And the meetings can go long. And most of us work all day. And some of us come to these meetings without having supper. And I've learned that once you hit about 10 o'clock at night, the effectiveness starts to wane. So I don't want to have, when you do come in, us tying you up or putting you on the spot. And in a similar way, I don't want to take a lot of time at your particular meetings. But instead, I'd like them to be very short, very precise, and be able to provide information that would be available to you and helpful to you to understand how we operate and why we do things the way we do. Sometimes it's a little bit odd, to the general public, like, why can't you do this? But there are certain rules, just as there are for you, that govern how we are to operate. Some set by the state and some by the charter. And so we have our own limitations also, just as you do. But again, I do appreciate, Mr. Murphy, your willingness to go along with this. I am hoping that this will be a very productive course that we are embarking upon, and that we will be able to move forward together and to make the city better. I look back at some of the things last year, the track. I mean, that was something that was a watershed event in this city.
The Newman track.
The Newman track.
Right.
The new Newman track, exactly. I'm looking forward to being there on the 8th for the first meet. I ran high school track on Attleboro, but I ran high school track, and then again for the hopefully for the dedication. But I remember when we were at the groundbreaking back in June of last year. For those of you who were there, the wind was picking up, and it was just about to start to. I think we just beat the raindrops, and I remember thinking as we were turning those first spades of dirt, it was 6 months ago on a cold winter night that we were in the mini auditorium, and we were talking about this, deciding would it be a go, and then to have it open in the fall, it was something that really caught the interest, and I thought, boy, something like that can help us to work together for a common goal that brought so much enjoyment. I don't think I'll ever forget that inaugural night and that game, and the enthusiasm in this city on that night. And to me, I think that shows what can happen when people are willing to set aside any differences, and work together for a common goal. And that's part of my goal as council president, in reaching out to the school committee and trying to work to try to make this a better city for all of our citizens. So again, I want to thank you. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night before us.
As am I.
And as I said,
I'll grab a bite before, so I'm not. But no, Mr. Cook,
Very
thank
good.
you, obviously, for coming in. The committee very much looks forward to your visits and to building an even stronger partnership than we currently enjoy with the municipal government. We talk a lot about partnerships in this room, and there's no single partnership as important as the school system's partnership with the municipal government. So thank you again. Are there any
Welcome.
comments or questions from the committee for Mr. Cook? Looks like you're getting off easy this time, Mr. Cook, but we can't promise that there won't be questions next time.
This is my third meeting since I got out of work, and
Okay.
I have not had supper yet either.
Okay, well, you should go.
My throat is going on me at this point, but I do want to thank you very much for allowing me to come here this evening, and I will see you tomorrow night.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll see you then.
And then I'll plan to be back sometime in June.
Absolutely.
For a break for the summer.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is our always popular Around Attleboro Spotlight events presented by our student representative, Mr. Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I've got 3 new events for you and then 2 kind of updates on past events, if you will. The first one is on April 3rd, which is this coming Thursday. We've got the Spotlight on the Massachusetts Mathematics Standards from 6:30 to 8:30 at Studley. And this is, just as the name suggests, a presentation of the changes in the mathematics standards in Massachusetts. Will be an opportunity for parents to receive education on how the content will be taught, and then it's an opportunity to provide strategies for understanding that material. Secondly, on Saturday, this coming Saturday, actually and Friday and Saturday, the Attleboro High School Drama Club will be putting on its spring musical. I think actually as we could hear them, rehearsing it for a little while.
How do they sound?
They sound pretty good from here, at least, but. That'll be 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday. It'll be Attleboro High School's rendition of Alice in Wonderland. So tickets are $10 for adults and then $7 for students. Somebody actually earlier this week described this spring musical to me as a merry, mad, and moony musical version of the original. So looking forward to that. And then the third event I've got for you is on Tuesday the 8th. We've got the Class of 2018 Welcome Night. That's at 6:30 p.m. in the Bray Auditorium. Again, Tuesday, April 8th, 6:30 p.m. It's a mandatory event for all 8th graders and then at least one parent or guardian to tag along with them. And then it's a basic presentation from CTE, from guidance, from a couple of students, from the athletics program, from our principal, a couple parents, and then we will also be lucky enough to hear the band perform. So those are the 3 events that I've got for you tonight, and then a couple of updates. On April 9th at 10 a.m. in our schools will be the next round of the Vocabulary Bee, which I spoke about a couple meetings ago, and then on April 4th from 6 to 8 will be Studley's version of the multicultural night that took place at Hyman Fine a couple weeks ago. So that's all I've got for you.
No, that's a full stockpile. So we appreciate that, Mr. Lancaster. And the Vocabulary Bee is all of the schools and the students who have advanced to the next round. Is that correct?
No, so I believe this round is to select school-wide winners.
I see.
And then from the next round to compete.
Very good. All right. Well, we wish the best of luck to all the participants. I believe we have one other announcement related to the student life dimension of our school system. Mr. Storrs, who's fresh from TF Green Airport, I believe.
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just came from Orlando, where I've been lucky enough to spend the last 3 days watching the Attleboro High School varsity cheerleaders compete at the Nationals competition, and I'm very proud to be the one to announce that they are national champions.
Oh, wow.
So congratulations, Attleboro High School varsity cheerleaders.
Mr. Storrs, I believe some representatives from the team will be joining us on April 14th. Is that correct?
Yeah, that we are definitely looking at doing that. As many know, Natalie Ferrara, the coach of the past 14 years, is retiring. So I believe a recognition of that would be very warranted.
Thank you, Mr. Storrs. Okay, moving on with our reminders and some promotional items. Our Director of Special Education and Student Support Services, Dr. McCarthy, and our Director of Student Services, Ms. DeAngelis, is also here. I know we've heard about these events. We've heard about one of these events already. We're going to hear in greater detail about the other one soon. But just as a recap and a sneak preview.
Sure. The first one is the Transition Expo, which you got to hear about at your last meeting. Attleboro Public Schools is partnering with the ARC of Bristol County and AEI to put on a transition day. The expo starts in the morning with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Department of Mental Health, Department of Developmental Services, and Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission have all joined forces and will be presenting to the families as a keynote address. And then they'll be moving off to do hour-long workshops for families. And then after that, there'll be workshops on things such as financial planning, recreation, things of that nature to help families prepare for transition. We have about 120 people already. Yeah, it's great. People from the school district are going and getting PDPs, people from Attleboro, and families from neighboring communities. So it's really shaping up to be a very impressive event that we're really excited to be offering. And then the second event, which Joan DeAngelis and myself will be back next meeting to talk about in depth, is Talking Through Challenging Times. This is an event that we're putting on to help families learn how to speak with their children about difficult times and how to seek out supports within our district. We'll be giving you more details about this, but this event is really shaping up very, especially all of our support staff. It's tremendous how many counselors, psychologists, behaviorists have reached out and wanted to be part of this planning. And really, I think the families that come that night are going to see the comprehensive support systems that we have within this district. Really, they want to come and meet families. And thank you for letting us put this out on the community, because we actually have community members who have RSVP'd to go. So it's very good.
Great. And so I know Ms. DeAngelis and Dr. McCarthy will be back on April 14th to, again, go into greater detail. But we've got it on the calendar along with April 5th. So if you're up late watching Channel 9 and this meeting's replaying, keep in mind those two dates, put them on your calendar. Again, we'll get into greater detail about the second program at our next meeting. So thank you very much, and thank you to your staffs for all the work that's going into putting these programs together.
And just a quick note, the Transition Expo is at AEI in North Attleboro, not Attleboro High School.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we will, I'll talk to the guy who made that slide. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our approval of minutes, we have minutes from March 10th, our meetings on March 10th, 2014, and our very brief meeting that addressed the situation in the Denton Auditorium on March 13th. So a motion to approve the school committee minutes for March 10th, 2014, and March 13th, 2014.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Could we separate them?
We can certainly separate them. I will withdraw that motion and make a motion to. Is that just for
Because I wasn't
of an
present
absence?
for the second one.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve the minutes from March 10th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. A motion to approve the school committee minutes for March 13th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
And one abstention, so 7-0-1.
I'll abstain as well, I wasn't there.
6-0-2.
Let's keep going.
How about we just we'll call for abstentions. Yeah. 5-0-3.
Who was the third?
Mrs. Scales, Mr. Withers, and Mr. Storrs have abstained. And Mr. Murphy's just embarrassed. We don't record that.
Just trying to make sure I had enough people.
That would be a problem. Moving on to our consent agenda. Motion to accept an anonymous donation of 16 cases of paper to be divided amongst the 5 elementary schools and 3 middle schools, with an additional 11 reams of copy paper going to Hill Roberts from an anonymous donor.
I'll second that.
Second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $378.20 from the Wamsutta Student Council to the Wamsutta Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $148.50 from Skills USA to the gifts donation line at Attleboro High School.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $175 from Bishop Feion High School for the college fair to the gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Our participation in the consent agenda is waning a little, so let's get those ayes out with a little more enthusiasm. A motion to accept a donation in the amount of $175 from North Attleboro High School to the college fair gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $300 from Bliss Brothers Dairy to the esteemed AHS Class of 2014 gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Pursuant to Mass General Laws 53A, a motion to accept and forward to the City Council for approval the following tangible property item from an anonymous donor to Coelho Middle School. 1 treadmill, estimated value of $600, and 1 elliptical with an estimated dollars of $150. Estimated value of $150.
I believe you did say 53 and a half, right?
I don't think the citation is accurate.
Oh, second round. Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And finally, a motion to approve a field trip proposal for 18 grade 10 to 12 AHS students to participate in the Skills USA state competition, trade, and leadership events from May 1st to May 3rd in Marlborough, Massachusetts.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I would just wish them the best of luck. The Skills USA participants have always represented the Attleboro schools very well. We usually do receive a visit from them at some point before the end of the school year, and we'll certainly try to arrange that with Mr. Rooney and Ms. Edmonds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That brings to an end our consent agenda. And next up is our open forum, which is a time when I read the following statement. This is a time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we're interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Would anyone like to address the committee in open forum? And that brings open forum to an end. And our next item, Mr. Rose, if you could just join us at the table for this next item, there may be some questions that pertain to your area. The McKinney-Vento issue is one that has been discussed at length amongst this committee with our partners in the municipal government. We're aware that this issue has been with us for some time. The committee in the past, I'm sorry, Ms. Daniels, last time I know it was my mistake. I apologize. I apologize. And it's an issue that it's been with us for a while. It's going to be with us for a while. If Ms. DeAngelis, Mr. Rose, if you could just give us sort of a synopsis of the background and how have we fared with regard to state reimbursement in the past? I know that, and then the obviously follow-up question is, how are we faring at the moment?
How about if I lead off, Joan?
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, the answer to one of your questions, Mr. Murphy, is that in fiscal year 12, we incurred approximately $124,000 in expenses. In FY13, we were reimbursed dollar for dollar for each of those expenses. But it's important to note that the city kicked in approximately $15,000 to match that 124. The city actually received approximately $109,000 as compared to the 124 that was put in. And that was the reimbursement that we received in FY13 for FY12 expenses. For FY14, we're hoping to receive approximately $113,000 because that's how much money we spent in FY13 for homeless transportation expenses. And again, there's always a year lag. And at this point, we have not received, when I say we, I'm referring to the school department and the city, have not received anything yet.
Sure. First, are there any Mr. Withers?
When does the city traditionally receive reimbursement?
Waiting for the state.
We're actually waiting for the state, for the reimbursement to come out. There's a training on Friday for the RFP that they've invited us to attend. And they've identified Attleboro as one of the communities they know is high need in terms of reimbursement. So that training's in Worcester, so we'll know more about when we can file for that reimbursement. Obviously, we want to do that early.
Great, thank you.
Ms. DeAngelis, when we say file with the state, is there a particular agency that is administering this program?
Well, it really goes through an RFP, so that's.
If I could jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Joan. The answer to your question, Mr. Murphy, is this year it's going to be, is being done differently. In the
Okay.
past, specifically for the FY13 reimbursement for based on the FY12 expenses, the only report that was done was the end of year report. And the DOE/DESC, they look at the end of year report, very clear homeless transportation expenses, and once that got verified, that was pretty much the green light for the state to say, if we've got the money, we'll give it to you. This particular fiscal year, that's not going to be the case. Now, there's still naturally the end of year report process, and naturally we claimed it, $113,000, and Lord knows between the mayor and the school department, we did everything we could to advance the communication to the state as quickly as we possibly could to get reimbursed. But this particular fiscal year, they're, in addition to the end of year report, they want us to, as Joan just mentioned, to put in a request for proposal, a formal application, which we'll certainly do, and we'll move forward accordingly.
Any concerns that this extra process will potentially delay the overall process in any way? Perhaps could it expedite? Is that change? Is there any way of foreseeing what the impact of that, the change in that variable might be?
Mind if I answer that, Joan? The answer to your question is it has already delayed the process. In fiscal year 13, we received, again, thanks to the city, we received that 120, we being the school department, we received the 124 in the fall. Now, granted, the city didn't get reimbursed probably until a few months later, but we got our funds back in the fall, which is when we badly needed them.
Yep.
So the answer to your question is the process has already been delayed, but there are two positives to this. The first positive is there's a process in place that the state has set up, which we're going to follow, and that Attleboro has already been earmarked as one of the cities, so we're already on their radar screen, and that's very, very, very good. The second item is the fact that there's a process that's going to be followed and that we're going to submit the application. I think we've got a pretty good shot at getting reimbursement because there's no question that the expenses were incurred, and any documentation that's needed in regard to justifying those expenses, we can easily provide.
Okay.
And naturally, those expenses will match up with what we've already submitted on our end-of-year report.
And I know, Ms. DeAngelis, that's been a tremendous amount of work on your part to make sure that that documentation is there in place. And do you want to comment on any sort of the efforts that are ongoing with regard to that? Or?
I just wanted to note that certainly our homeless transportation for February and March has significantly increased. So we were around 30 to 36 students between November and December and January. We were transporting, February we were transporting 51 students, and this month it's up to 65. So collecting that amount of paperwork in terms of students coming into the district and then kids that are leaving, it could be maybe only 3 days worth of transportation, but to make sure that we have the documentation that backs up for each child and they're entering and exiting on a daily basis. So we had 2 students exit this afternoon, so it's
Yeah,
keeps
so
coming.
I mean, this is a very complicated, very multidimensional issue, but would it be fair to say that at least for the parts of this with regard to the challenge that's being imposed on the school system and on the municipality is the fluctuation in cost, the sort of wild fluctuations, the delay in ultimately receiving the funding, even if that process is potentially going to be improved, the overall size of the deficit, that this is just expensive and a growing burden, and frankly, a tremendous amount of administrative work to ensure that we're doing everything we need to do to make sure that we are in a position to be able to receive the support that, at least at the local level, we feel we're entitled to from the state.
And
Are
I've
there
been
any other-
communicating with the city council every week, giving them an update and a report of what's happening weekly. That was something that we agreed upon.
Sure.
I also sent a letter to all the transporters to make sure that they were communicating with us, because sometimes we were getting bills and not being notified, and we've gotten a very good response for the transportation companies.
That's good.
So they're calling and saying, we're starting with these students, they come from this town. So that's been really helpful for us to project out what the costs will be as well.
Okay, thank you.
And also that communication not only goes to the city council, which we were present at, as you recall,
Sure.
but also goes to the mayor's office and the auditor's
Right.
department in the mayor's office.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this issue from the committee? Mr. Withers?
Yeah, one more question. It's a two-parter. I think I know the answer to the first, but the first part being, with regards to how the reimbursements work, am I correct that the reimbursements go from the state to the city gets the funds? And then, so my second part is there any requirement from the state that the city has to reimburse the schools, or is that just something that we've had an agreement with the city in the past, and that, you know, under their goodwill, they've reimbursed us as for our expenses?
Mind if I answer that,
Go
John?
ahead.
The answer to your question, Mr. Withers, is transportation is a city expense. So the city should get the money. And when we go to submit our budget, we include it as part of our total budget, as well we shouldn't, as well we will for FY15. But the transportation dollars and the transportation expenses are a city expense. So the bottom line is I don't foresee any issue whatsoever with our transportation budget and our transportation needs for FY14 being properly funded as they have been throughout the fiscal year. Now, if this $113,000 can come in between now and the end of June, gosh, it's going to help a whole heck of a lot in funding those needs. But the expenses go to the city, and do not have any concern that the city will meet its need of paying for all the transportation bills. And that homeless transportation money, if it comes in, will certainly be a good revenue source to do just that.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Larson?
Tom, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the conversations that I know you and I have had, as far as the reimbursement, a lot of it really hinges off the state receiving and accepting the year-end report basically from you.
Correct.
From us.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't want people to get the impression that there's some grand possibility that this could show up before the end of June. I mean, I realize there's a new process, but I mean, up until last year, I know a lot of it hinged off, you know, if you got your report in time and there was still money left in the budget, you would get some. So it really, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, it really comes down to the timing of us getting our report up to the state and them still having money in that line item that we could try to draw against.
Mr. Larson, I'll know better after the Friday meeting in Worcester. But
Okay.
the bottom line is, that's all in the past. The report's been submitted. It's already been reviewed. There are no issues with the numbers. There are no issues, frankly, with any part of the end of your report. I'm in contact, not on a regular basis, I'm happy to say, because I should be in contact on a regular basis, but I'm in contact with the DSE. So that's all clear. You know, frankly, in a way, I'm encouraged by the fact that there is this RFP process, because my concern was there wasn't going to be any money at all distributed for homeless transportation. The fact that there is an RFP process is an indication that there is money. But you make a good point. We don't know what that time frame is going to be in regard to submitting the RFP and getting reimbursed. My hope is that it's certainly going to be done for this fiscal year, but I'll know a little bit more on Friday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Storrs?
I think it's very important to indicate that this is a mandate. This is a state mandate for us to be able to
Yes.
transport
Yes.
these students. If we get the funds, it's funded. If we're not getting the funds, of course, we have an unfunded mandate. So historically, how often are they short on the estimation that we provide? In other words, last year you put in 124 and we got 109. How often is that significant of a difference?
I believe the very first fiscal year in which homeless transportation was even funded was FY13.
No kidding.
Yeah. And the good news is that, and I know I'm repeating myself, the city kicked in the balance, so we're golden there. My hope is that the ratios are gonna be about the same for FY14, based on FY13's expenses, and we're gonna come in close to around 100,000, maybe a little more toward that 113, and the city can use that as a good revenue source to pay that transportation bill.
I just want to clarify one point because I think it's important for what I hope, I suspect will sort of, where this conversation will culminate. The mandate, as I understand it, is a federal mandate. In the state auditor, that comes from legislation that was passed in the 1980s. The state auditor, as late as 2011, declared it, interpreted it to be an unfunded mandate. Unfortunately, when the state auditor declares an unfunded mandate, while it's nice for accuracy purposes, it doesn't actually do anything to fund it or solve the problem.
Correct.
Which is why there are efforts ongoing at in the general court to potentially address this issue. Now, the previous school committee sometime in the spring of 2012, I believe, communicated to our legislative delegation, our 2 state senators, our 2 state representatives, the feeling of this body that this is an issue that is having a disproportionate impact on the Attleboro community and the Attleboro school system, and therefore we believe it should be, as our representatives in the legislature, it should be on their radar and be taken with the utmost seriousness. I'm inclined to make, again, we're still having this conversation to what impact our letter had. That can be debated, I suppose. But I think as the impact grows, I think it's worth us making that communication again. And so, are there any other questions or comments with regard to the substantive issue? Okay. I am going to, again, there are certain motions have more teeth than others, but I think it's important that to the degree the members feel this way, that the body speak with one voice. So I will make a motion to convey to our state delegation the impact the McKinney-Vendo funding issue is having on Attleboro and the Attleboro schools.
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion? Yeah, I would just say that I've left this motion vague. Certainly, with the vote of yes, the committee will endorse the communication of this body to our state delegation. But if there are any other bodies that would like to join in that communication, we'd certainly be willing to partner with them and write a joint letter. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? And that motion passes 8-0. So, all right. Thank you, Ms. DeAngelis. Thank you, Mr. Rose. And Mr. Sawyer, if you could join the committee. Okay, Mr. Sawyer, if you could start with the personnel report.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I have 3 quick items for you this evening on the personnel report. First is the retirement of Sandra Devine, kindergarten teacher at Studley. The resignation of Gary Witherell, security monitor for the high school. And I have an appointment, Elise Harper, paraprofessional at Wilson. Includes the personnel report.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer, for the personnel report. If you could move on to our next agenda item, and I don't know if Mr. Sawyer, if Mr. Sheehan, we're going to introduce this topic, but the issue, which will not necessarily be subject to committee action tonight, but certainly is subject to discussion, is the school calendar for the 2014-2015 school year. This is a proposed calendar that has come from the administration through the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee. It is now before the committee for our consideration, but again, as I understand it from the administration, it is not so time sensitive that we necessarily need to take action on this tonight, but it is ripe for discussion. Do I have that right, Mr. Sawyer? Okay, so if you want to perhaps just take us through the highlights and some of the.
Sure. I don't know if Mr.
Nope.
Sheehan. Okay.
Go ahead.
So yes, the administration brought the calendar issue to the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee because we believe strongly that we need to think of our school calendar as a teaching and learning issue. The choices we make with our calendar have an impact on the teaching and learning environment in our schools, and we wish to think of it in that way. We had a very robust discussion at the subcommittee meeting. We looked at school committee policy, state regulations, and contractual language that all have an impact on framing the constraints of any conversation about the calendar. We looked at next year's calendar, and from that, I have brought forward the proposed calendar that was generated by that discussion. One of the givens was that the 2nd of September has already been voted on as the first day for teachers and the 3rd for students, and so this calendar starts with that premise. And a couple of things I'd like to point out to you is that we have not put the other 2 PD days that are called for by the AEA contract in December as they have been for the last couple of years. We would like to move away from that. The proposal has them in earlier in the year, which we think will be a benefit to teachers, and we've put them in this proposed calendar on the 10th of both October and November, which with the Columbus Day weekend and Veterans Day holidays would create 2 4-day weekends, which we think will be a benefit to families as well as being good for our PD schedule as well. Another point I would make is that we have added January 2nd as a vacation day. That is a Friday. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to bring everybody in for a 1-day week.
I think it's going to snow that day anyway.
I hope so. And then the other big move that this calendar has that's a change from previous calendars is we've moved the early release days that we're proposing off of Wednesdays in the middle of the week, which have not been popular, and moved them towards either the days before either long weekends or holidays, generally Fridays, but not necessarily. And we think that this move will, again, preserve what we're doing, but be a little bit easier on families in their planning. So those are sort of the highlights of this discussion that are represented in the calendar I brought forward to you today.
Sure. Are there questions or comments from the committee with regard to the ideas that have been discussed? Mrs. Scales?
Like Mr. Sawyer did say, we did discuss it at length at the subcommittee level, and it was unanimous there that we support the calendar, and that we do think it's going to maximize the teaching and learning in the district. And I, for one, did like the Wednesdays, so let's not forget that.
Not totally unanimous. Mr. Storrs.
Yeah, I think it's very important to indicate, with the Wednesdays, the big issue that we saw was, the students come in for full days on Monday and Tuesday, then they have a half a day off in the middle of the week, and then back for 2 days. It seemed kind of, it's best to have them 4 full days in a row, and then the half day. It just made a lot more sense. So I'm very happy to see that come forward.
Sure. Any other questions or comments with regard to, I think it was a tie. I believe the rule is the tie goes to the superintendent, is how I learned it. So
in conjunction with the committee work, this also received unanimous support from all of the administration that it was brought to earlier. So 100% of the administration was behind what the contents of this calendar was.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Withers?
Yeah, I was just wanted to know if you could kind of set forth a little bit the administration's rationale for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, given that it is a change from historical practice.
The Wednesday before Thanksgiving certainly would be a change. I think we look at it as another potential school day in the meatiest part of the academic calendar rather than one at the end of the year.
Is that a pun because of Thanksgiving? Or?
Unintentionally, yes.
It's a sad one if it is.
If it was sad.
Before that.
Yes. It would be gravy, yes.
Very, very unfortunate.
Get him started.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
Where do you go from that?
That's a good question. Did that answer your question? I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the things that's clear is a tremendous amount of thought has gone into this. The fact that there's, and again, is this a change in the sense that it's really going to rock the world of public education because we've moved half days from Wednesday to Friday. I would probably say no, but there are significant changes here. And I think that, as Mrs. Scales pointed out, the fact that they are grounded in a teaching and learning rationale speaks to the degree to which all of the things that we should do should be moving in the direction of the overall mission, which incidentally is what we're going to be talking about in just a few moments. But obviously this has an impact on our workforce in addition to our students and our families. We did invite the AEA to comment on the calendar. They have, but just recently. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion that we table this issue until our April 14th meeting, so that we can ensure that we give the AA's comments the consideration that they certainly deserve. That was a motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? Abstentions? So we will pick up this issue again at our next meeting. And again, Mr. Sawyer, thank you for your
Thank you.
Okay. Before we move on to the subcommittee reports, I did add an agenda item, which is as broad as it sounds on the agenda, and it's a few items that were discussed at length during our orientation program when this committee was first sworn in, and we went to school committee boot camp. And during those discussions, there was a consensus that formed, and I think really felt by both the administration and the school committee, that one of our high priorities for this term is the development of a new mission statement and a strategic plan to help guide us in the direction of that mission. It was voiced by several members, and we have a vision statement in place right now. We continue to adhere to that vision statement, but all vision statements and all mission statements have to grow with the organization, and it's been some time since a school committee visited these issues, and in the case of the strategic plan, it's been an alarmingly long time since the school committee visited those issues. So they are issues and projects that we'll be working on in the coming months in conjunction with the administration and in some cases representatives from the community. And the point that I wanted to make, and I would invite committee members to sort of comment or ask questions or disagree or just say your piece on this, is that we have been in office now for 3 months. And I think everyone could agree that there have been a number of events that have not been necessarily predictable or not necessarily on our to-do list the night we were sworn into office. I would say that much of the last 3 months have been characterized as such. Over the next few months, as we know, we are in the process of negotiating with 7 unions to come to new collective bargaining agreements. And we have a budget process that is going to be picking up steam in the coming days. This committee will be busy. This committee needs to be focused on those tasks. And I think my point in just sort of bringing this up tonight is that as the governing body of the school system, even when we are consumed with the unpredictable things that we have been over the past 3 months, and the stuff that we've known since the time you took out those nomination papers, that this was going to be something that was going to be coming. We pass a budget every year, and we do contracts periodically. And so those aren't surprises, but we still have an obligation and a responsibility to keep our eye on those long-term goals that we set for ourselves and with our administration. And the point that I just wanted to make is that we won't lose sight of that. So if people have comments or questions, and certainly the other part of it is a principal goal of this committee is to develop a more comprehensive external and public relations strategy to help inform some of our decisions. So if there are questions or comments, I would welcome them. And we'll keep this discussion brief, but I know there were some members that had some feelings on those. So now would be the time to volunteer those feelings. Mr. Storrs.
Yeah, you know what I'll say is ultimately these are policies. So the committee has to make the decision. And what I found very interesting was one of the words that you just used in the explanation was comprehensive. Just like when we went through the superintendent process last year, the committee took on a significant comprehensive process that I think something along those lines, maybe not to the same degree, but definitely something where all stakeholders are given the opportunity to provide input similarly, would be very, very beneficial for us in developing the vision and the mission and everything else.
Yeah, Mr. Storrs, I couldn't agree more, and I think we've talked a little bit about in the orientation, but I would really say that the research phase of the superintendent search, where we conducted 39 focus groups and interview sessions, was the first step in this process that needs to continue. And I think you're absolutely correct that those same stakeholders and participants who volunteered their time and their thoughts during that process are the sort of resources that we need to tap to sort of move on to that next step, which is to say, all right, we've figured out where we are, and we've got our administration in place to continue to execute our plan, but where do we go from there? And I think that's sort of the next step in this. Ms. Singer, did you?
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, we all, as you said, when we started in January, agreed that this was something that we would tackle as a committee, and I think it's the next step in laying that foundation for the era that's continuing on and building a very comprehensive district and culture within that. And I think that it's definitely something that's a little bit overdue, because I think that was kind of it was an exciting piece for us to kind of get started.
We've had
Not
some
that this other stuff wasn't
We've had some
exciting, but it was just a little more exciting for us. So I look forward to that happening soon.
Any other questions or comments on this issue or topic? Mr. Lancaster.
I would just briefly encourage the committee to continue to make it a priority to hear the voice of its students, because I know sometimes it can seem like maybe a little busy work to hear the voice of its students, but I think it's important for the committee, as Mrs. Storrs sort of touched upon, to hear the voice of all constituents. And I think that as the student representative, I know that we will value the committee's efforts to hear our voices and look forward to participating in the redefinition of the mission statement and the initiatives in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. What about alumni? Are they important as well? Or?
Yes, I would say.
You're on the cusp, you know what I mean? You need to start speaking for both hats. I don't mean to make you feel like you need to leave already, but
you're kicking me out already.
Once
yeah.
you've got one foot out the door,
Let him play his season first.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, again, there's no action to be taken on this tonight. I would now publicly, as I have in the past privately, just ask the committee members and the members of the administration just to continue to chew on this and to think about it, because, as I said, we've got a full agenda right now. We've got a lot of work that needs to be done in the next few months, but these tasks aren't going to go away. And in reality, and if we're truly going to be a mission-driven organization, our budget process and our negotiations need to go on in the context of our philosophy, our mission, and our strategic plan. So in a lot of ways, these things are very interrelated. And the final point I would just say is that this school district, like all school district, goes through difficult chapters. That there are challenges that you don't expect, there are some that you do, and that I think that it is the responsibility of the governing body to sort of set the tone as to how we are going to handle those challenges, and that the more focused we seem, I think that we have the potential to keep the district that much focused. And I think we do have a focused school committee. I think we have a focused and determined administration to help, led by the superintendent, to help move this district forward. I think there's very little question that we have the best educators in the Commonwealth, and we have families who are truly engaged and want this school system to move forward. So that may sound just like broad talk, but a lot of times it needs to start with a broad foundation in order to get to the point where you need to get. So thank you for participating in that discussion, and now we'll move on to our subcommittee reports, starting with our curriculum and instruction subcommittee with Ms. Singer. And I know we have some guests, and I believe maybe Mr. Sawyer could rejoin the committee as well. Ms. Cameron, you want to come up as well, yeah. And Mr. Rooney, anyway, whoever's coming up. I'm not doing well tonight with pulling people out of the audience. Ms. DeAngelis, if you want to come on up, why not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last committee meeting was Tuesday, March 11th. We had 3 items on the agenda. One was discussed previously by Mr. Sawyer regarding the school calendar. The second was global education. Mr. Toby Reed, the Attleboro High School Social Studies Coordinator, came to discuss global learning and how, what we currently have, foreign language here. We have teachers who come from other countries to share ideas and with our educators here, and looking at how we can expand our global learning for our students at all levels of education. He mentioned some programs that have global leadership certificates that they give at graduation. There are requirements for those, things like a foreign language, community service, foreign travel. There were a couple other components. And so it was really just a beginning discussion about what we currently have and where we might take our global learning in the district. And so we will be following up with things on future agendas in regards to those things, foreign language. And, if we did go with that global learning certificate, what would that look like? What would that process be? Those kinds of things will be further discussed. The second, the third thing was in regards to our evening diploma program that we have, and Donna Cameron was kind enough to come and give a very comprehensive presentation to us regarding our program and the great work that her staff does, and I won't get too detailed because she is going to give us a presentation tonight. But it was around the discussion of on a yearly basis, you come up with, we have the resources that are needed to fund this program, and what that looks like, and is it set up correctly, and how can we bring more funds into it. So I will hand it over to the three of you to go through, and then we'll wrap up at the end.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank Mr. Rooney and Ms. Cameron for joining us this evening to bring to the full committee this issue that is one of great importance. The Attleboro Evening Diploma Program has been chugging along for a number of years, but it was not set up for a sustainable future. And we'd like to ask you to consider tonight to take action to help us to provide the foundation that it needs for us to move forward to keep this program a vital one and part of our future. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Rooney, who is the principal of Attleboro High School, which is currently where the program is residing, is here to endorse a change in the way we want to think about this.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. One of the great things about Attleboro, and I think it was evidenced in the discussion that you just had a couple of minutes ago about mission, and spoken on so eloquently by Max, is that this is a students first district. And the Attleboro Evening Diploma Program, although you look at it statistically, it has helped the dropout rate at the high school. It has helped the graduation rate at the high school. The most important thing is it's been a life-changing experience for not only the students who have come through the Evening Diploma Program, but also for their families. The fact that these students have overcome adversity, they have a program where they can come and they can be successful, they can get a diploma, has an impact on younger siblings, has impact on cousins, friends, relatives. It's a game changer. It really is. And we're asking your consideration for us to, as Mr. Sawyer said, change the complexion of it in such a way that we can have financial stability and sustainability. And this is also part of a 2-year plan that we have that we have in hopes of putting other programs underneath this umbrella. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Cameron.
Good evening. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear about our program and what our future goals are. So I don't think you were all around in 2009. We were founded in September of 2009 to provide an alternative path to a high school diploma. You should know that there are very few programs in the state of Massachusetts that provide an alternative path as opposed to a GED for students who've dropped out. Based on the Massachusetts core curriculum, and we are small, but within that we provide all of the rigor and accountability that we do in the general high school. So our mission statement, if you look at it, you'll see that it's very similar to the high schools. The Attleboro Evening Diploma Program provides an alternative learning experience where students are given the opportunity to develop the skills and knowledge necessary for personal and academic growth. I think it's you were just talking about your mission statement, so this is what drives us. And the two things that make it different is alternative. Really, our approach to education is significantly different. And that we added in personal there because we're more, our students need a lot of other kinds of supports. And they need to, we help them figure out how to take what's been adversity and turn it into skills. Okay, how's this work?
I'm hoping that button.
That's what I'm hoping to. Okay, so our graduates succeed. 140 students have already graduated from AEDP. 43 are supposed to graduate this May. I hope you'll join us on May 30th. We have grown. In 2009, we were 24 students, and we now have 75 students. For the past 2 years, we've had to turn students away. Who are we? Well, we're mothers, fathers, first in the family to graduate. 68% of our students are low income. 18% of our students come from homes where English is not the primary language. And 22% of our students left as ninth graders. And what this doesn't tell you is that many of those students who left as ninth graders are leaving as ninth graders because they've been in ninth grade for 2, sometimes 3 years. With our 95% graduation rate, earning a diploma improves their lives and enriches our community. As I'm sure you're aware, there's much research that relates to high school dropout rates and violence, poverty, and the future of our community. So despite the fact that we are doing amazing, we do have some challenges. And honestly, the challenges really comes from a restricted funding sources. So we have to get our funding through 3 ways. The allocation of my salary comes through the high school budget. We have a sliding scale tuition from $75 per course for low-income students, all the way up to $200 per course for full tuition. And we have been lucky to have generous grants every year from Bristol County Savings Bank, of which we can't really count on to have year after year. And then at the end of the year, last year it happened, and then we expect it to happen again this year. We run a shortfall, and then the school committee helps us find whatever money we need to pay our bills. So we're really kind of on a shoestring here. And so what's missing? We need comprehensive wraparound services. We have a guidance counselor that works 5 hours a week. We have an adjustment counselor that works 3 hours a week. We have no transition coordinator. Those are really crucial for any student, but specifically for our population. We can't offer the courses that we would like to offer. We have no foreign language, which means that we will be out of compliance with the Common Core, which is very important to us to maintain the rigor. And we don't have special education services. In order for a student to enter our program, they have to withdraw, they have to sign off on their IEP because we can't afford to pay full-time special education teachers. Of course, we do our best to follow the IEP, but they no longer have that safety net. So, we are requesting that the school committee approve for us to apply for a specific school code from DESE, and we're proposing that the name of this new school would be the Attleboro Community Academy. So, according to DESE, alternative education is defined as an initiative within a public school district established to serve at-risk students whose needs are not being met in the traditional school setting. That's clearly what we're already doing. The separate school will do many good things for us. It will guarantee us Chapter 70 monies that we're not getting. I've been told that that's approximately $8,000 a student. We will qualify for alternative education funding through the Department of Education, that because we don't have an alternative education code, we don't currently qualify for. And it opens us up to a larger pool of private grant monies. So that's really it. We are a successful alternative program. We do not get the financial backing from the Commonwealth that we deserve. And the community does not get the recognition of a program which is, in my opinion, one of the best programs in the state. And people call me from all over the state to ask me what we're doing. And it's time that the community knows what great things are going on here. And one way we can do that is to give us our own school code.
Thank you very much.
Questions? You're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions for?
Thank you. I mean, it certainly seems to make a lot of sense to do this, so my question is, everything you said was so positive. Is there any downside to doing this, whether it's budgetary or administration-wise throughout the district?
I honestly can't think of a particular downside. The plan is to, in the first year, to basically run the program as it's currently created, and to then use the funds that this will generate, because we do believe that we're leaving about $500,000 on the table every year by not having this school code. So by bringing that money in, we can then plan to utilize the money to address some of the structural issues that really pose an existential threat to this program.
And I think that's very important to indicate that the funding that we would get from this would go right back into that program to resolve all the issues that you had raised. And so it's positive in that way. It's not as if all of a sudden we're just going to have $500,000 extra money to go spend it around. The point is that it will be used for this program and to make things a lot better than it is. And we know that the funding will be there every year, and that's very important.
And just a comment that, I really do appreciate the passion that you bring to the program. It really shows, and that this really just defines that Attleboro really does care about all the students, diverse learners, and I just think it's a great idea.
I've had the opportunity and the pleasure, actually, to be at the last two graduations, and you are absolutely right. There are as many family members around each of your graduates as there are around Mr. Rooney's in the first week of June. So, it is, you definitely get the feeling that it's making huge impacts in family lives. And had the opportunity to talk to some of the people, and you really get that sense. So this would be a great thing to find a way to make this happen.
Yeah, I would certainly echo the comments of everyone else, and the graduation that it's one of many things that we're invited to in the spring. That's always a highlight of serving. I think the rationale is sound. I think it's a necessary step. I appreciate the administration recognizing it and prioritizing it to the degree that you have recently. And the only other thing I would say is, if we have any other programs for whom we're potentially leaving money on the table, let's take a look at those. And let's get them in as quickly as possible for this type of reclassification vote. So thank you.
Now, once, if we do vote to give the code that needs to be given, is it guaranteed, the funding?
Yes, it is.
It's under Chapter 70 funding.
Right. So once that code is given, what would need to happen as far as filing?
It would allow us to claim those students as part of our October 1 SIMS report, which for the last couple of years we have not been able to do.
It's just a simple form, and Jen Hodges has to sign it, and it goes into DESE, and then it'll automatically become part of the SIMS data that the school is responsible for.
Thank you.
So that was the presentation that was given, and we, as a committee, voted or made a motion to bring it up to the full committee. It was unanimous that we should bring it forward to the full committee for a motion for the new school code. So, was that made by you or me? Oh, it's made by me. Okay. So, I would like to make a motion to recommend reclassification of the evening diploma program as an alternative high school.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Along with that motion, are we looking to rename
Oh, I
the
didn't know
program
that.
to the New Attleboro Community Academy?
You certainly can. Yeah, I think the next procedural step is the finance subcommittee needs to create the actual line item. But since we'll need to call that line item something, I'll make a motion to rename the Attleboro Evening Diploma Program the Attleboro Community Academy at the first effective date that the administration requires it to have a new name.
Second.
Thank you very much.
We just need
All
to
in
say-
favor?
Aye.
Now, thank you very
Thank
Now
you.
I can say thank you very much.
I get confused when you make the motion. Go ahead. And that was it. So our next curriculum subcommittee meeting was actually moved to May 13th for rescheduling of another budget meeting on the same night. So.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. Moving on to our policy subcommittee report, Mr. Withers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The policy subcommittee met on March 7th. We had a full agenda that night, and before I turn it over to Mr. Sawyer for the meat of really what we talked about that day, I'll start at the end. At the end of the meeting, we started a discussion to look at our current policies we have in place regarding safe schools and also regarding communication with parents, with the community, and with our law enforcement, with the idea that these are policies that need to be reviewed and updated. And I think it was the feeling of the subcommittee that this is something that needs to be done diligently and not done right away just as a way to react to the latest news, but in a way to get it right so that what we have in place will work for anything that could happen going forward. So that's an ongoing process that I would anticipate will probably take us over the next few policy subcommittee meetings as we work to get those policies in place. The beginning of the meeting and the majority of the meeting was spent discussing the handbooks for the high school, the middle schools, and the elementary schools. And for that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Withers. The handbooks that I have brought forward for approval first have been updated to reflect changes for personnel information. Obviously, the dates in the handbooks had to be changed to reflect the 2014-15 school year. We corrected any typographical errors that we found along the way, which there are always a couple. And we updated the table of contents to reflect some of the other changes. We had a number of health services language changes. Most notably, town hall use procedure was added to the middle school handbook. It should have been there. I don't know how it didn't end up there, so we put that in. It's also in elementary and high school already. We changed the language in the BMI screening section in all three levels to reflect changes in state law. We no longer automatically send that information home, but it's available upon request by parents. And then there were a couple other consistency changes to make sure that all three handbooks were saying the same thing the same way for health services. One of the biggest changes is that we had to update the chapter 37 and 8H, 37H and a half and 37H and 3/4. In 2012, a change to the law was made, and this section of the law has been revised. So all three handbooks have been updated to reflect that change. Based on a review of our own policies, I actually don't think that the change in the law has much of an impact on Attleboro. We're already doing what the changes in the law call for, but it was important to include the new law in the handbooks. And then we made a series of small changes that were different for each of the three levels, and those changes were included in the template that I sent that had a list of all the changes. And then the final thing is, in our going through the handbook, we found some policies, school committee policies, that we thought needed revising, and we brought those to your attention, and that's part of tonight's agenda as well.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is thank Mr. Sawyer and the administration that helped him putting together the handbooks and the changes for our consideration. I think that the charts that they did showing what specific sections were changed and what the changes were really helpful in going through and understanding exactly what was being changed and easy to follow, so thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Sawyer with regard to the proposals that he made or that have been presented?
No questions. I mean, they looked pretty straightforward without any sort of major disruptions to school cultures. I mean, sometimes the policy handbooks can be one of those moments where everybody holds their breath and hopes that we're not banning anything. So it seemed like there was generally things that have been part of long ongoing discussions. And
Yeah, I mean, the most notable changes that I haven't already reviewed is the inclusion of the prerequisites in the high school handbook that we've already discussed. The prerequisites for the accelerated math program in 7th and 8th grade, which are already in place in the district, we decided, well, we're going to put those prerequisites in for the high school. We should probably put those in as well. So those were added. And then most of the other changes were really quite minor.
Okay, thank you.
So are there multiple policies that we will be approving tonight?
Yes.
Okay, and so those will need to be tabled until the next meeting per other policy, I believe.
My understanding is that if it's an actual policy change of the school committee, the vote takes place, and then the actual implementation of the change is announced 2 weeks later. It's just a matter of essentially a 2-week waiting period.
And the only reason I raise that is because if those policies are, of course, in the handbook, we'll need to wait the same time frame in regard to.
Will that cause any problem?
No,
with
they
regard
don't go to
printing
print
or-
till longer.
That's what I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
So, yep.
All right. So I have some motions for tonight that we'll approve, and then they'll go through the waiting period. And all these motions that I'm going to bring forward were all unanimously approved by the subcommittee to bring them forward today for approval as well. First, I would make a motion to approve the proposed changes presented by Mr. Sawyer to the 2014-2015 student handbooks.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I'd make a motion to approve the removal of the outdated web references in school committee policy AC, the non-discrimination policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next, I'd make a motion to remove the outdated reference to the DARE officer in school committee policy JICFB. It's the anti-bullying policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next, I'd make a motion to change the references from ILA to paraprofessional in the school committee policies GBK, KE, and KE-E1.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. And so that was our discussion on the 12th. Our next meeting is next week in this room at 6:30 on April 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Withers. To bring us in for a landing with our finance facilities and procurement subcommittee report, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Chairman, we have no report tonight. We have not met as a committee since our last meeting. We are due to meet April 9th in this room at 7 o'clock. I believe you'll be in charge of that meeting.
I will be, but just this once, so don't get used to it.
Thank
If
you.
anyone else is going to the National Honor Society, they need to do it at a night when you don't have a finance meeting. So thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. All right.
Awesome. I don't think the Sox pull out the win today.
I don't think they did either.